What's up, everyone? This is Sunnyvale. Welcome to another draft video for Eternal Titans, the best place on the web to get Eternal content. I've just recently completed my draft pick order, so I'm sure it's prominent on the page that this is being displayed. And also, if you go into my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Sunnyvale, and do draft pick, you'll get a link to my evaluation of all the cards in the set. In case you are looking for input as to how good all the cards are. Also, one other thing I want to say before we get started is I did a draft panel with the two best drafters I know, Man and Mouse and Kilivovich. You can find that also on the Eternal Titans website. Should be pretty easy to find. And if not, just search all three of our names on YouTube and you'll probably find it. Anyway, so enough ado. Let's get on to drafting. This set is a blast. I've been enjoying it a lot. I feel like there are a lot of decisions that matter, and it's a lot of there's a lot of ways to build your turn, basically, with how you spend your power and what you choose to use your power on for each effect. So let's see what we've got here. I have not played with this card yet. I suspect it's pretty good. Playing a 2/2 flying and scouting is a pretty good effect for 3, and then if you do stall out, paying 7 to make additional flyers seems pretty good to me. And if your opponent somehow has more 3 or more cards in hand, which seems highly unlikely at this stage in the game, you get 3 flyers. So this seems pretty solid to me. The only issue is if you don't onslaught it to begin with, that's a lot of trouble, although I think that Onslaught, especially on curve, is not too difficult to trigger. So I think this is the card that we're going to take. Combustion Brawler is very good, especially when it's wearing something like, oh, I don't know, a Heretic's Cannon. Usually you're just playing this one out for its cost, but a 6/4 Overwhelm is real strong for 5. Enemy player can't gain health. That's a big deal against the Twist decks, and even the the shift effect is relevant. The other coin I'd be considering here is Emerald Coin. I think that this is just a good way of adding value to your deck. Having a power, put a +1/+1 weapon on something is a pretty big deal. I haven't played with this rare yet, so I'm going to go ahead and take it. It's just some other cards that are reasonable in this pack. Are Razor Quill is a good common. High Alert's reasonable common. But I wanna try playing with this rare because I think it looks like it's serviceable. It looks like it's I don't know. It's good when you need evasion, and it's good when you need to grind someone out. So let's go ahead and take that. Okay. Ooh. Okay. So this is one of the things that this card is the Scout Matters payoff card. There's a bunch of things that check to see if you're scouting, and most of them don't matter a whole ton. But this one really matters. If you scout once when this is in play, it becomes a 4/4 Overwhelm. That's not until end of turn. It just is a 4/4 Overwhelm. And then if you scout a second time, it's going to be absolutely huge. So this only scouts... Yeah, okay, so you just scout when you play it. I am in for going deep on Peak Tap Trekker. This can get way out of hand really quickly. There's a bunch of good fire cards worth noting. Nimble Conscript, Streets of Flame, and Horde Duelist are all playable. Nimble Conscript being the best of them, in my opinion. And there's also a Tremor Shocker, which I think is a really good time common. But I'm really in to try to make the Peak Tap Trekker work. These decks want to be Skycrag, and you want to have the Blurry Chaser, because that one is one of the best ways to scout repeatedly. Yeah, it's one of the best ways to scout repeatedly. So let's try the Peak Top Trekker. I'm interested to see how this goes. Of course, we get past a pack with absolutely nothing in terms of Primal. Okay, so I did say that Fire has had a bunch of good cards in the last pack, so I'm happy to take the Oni Patrol. It's also just a pretty solid card, as it turns out. 3/2 for 1 is pretty nice, and on turn 1, having just a 2/1 for 1 is not bad. So I think that's going to be the pick here. I think that Svetya's Faithful is a little better, but I haven't seen the power level of Justice cards be as high being passed to us as Fire. And, well, I suppose you could be Scout, like, Peak Top Trekker has a lot of enablers in a lot of different factions. The other direction I could go is I could take Coastal Curator. 4/4 is just like a really good stat line. It's difficult to make the Curator attack, but it's good enough on defense that it's often worth it. I'm going to take the Oni Patrol, though. I have a feeling that fire's open. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay. There's another Scout Matters cards, but I just don't think that this is worth it at all. I actually think that Fandoff is fine. It's not insane, obviously. It's basically a Days Plus, but it costing 1 is like a big deal. There's a lot of combat tricks that you can blow out with it. I think the best card is just Auric Lookout. You need to have a curve in this format, and this does that nicely. It also is a Scout Matters card, so that's pretty cool. Temporal Adept, I think, is okay, but it's understated for how much it costs, and forget about trying to play Cinder Sprite. Devotee of the Sands is pretty good, too. So, take the Lookout. Alright, here we go. We have some really good ones here. We might be moving out of Primal, by the way. Because there are no Primal cards in this pack, and in the last pack there weren't any... Well, I guess the 3/3 for 3 is fine, too. Okay, Toroid Test Pilot, I think, is pretty good at just carrying a draft. It's a big flyer that becomes... Well, I mean, it's a nice defensive flyer that becomes a good attacker, and that's just good. You defend a turn, and then you start putting on the gas and attacking your opponent. There's also a Mining Team, which goes well in a lot of different situations, and Horde Duelist is just a fine 2-drop. I think Mining Team is a little better than Horde Duelist. Mining Team having Warp and Scout is, like, really nice. And then there's also Nimble Conscript, which is pretty powerful. But I think that the best one here is just the Test Pilot. Like, I've been so impressed by this card. It also enables any Armor Matter strategies, which is unlikely to happen, but it's just so well statted for what you can do with it that I want to take it here. Okay, I like the Steadfast Paladin. It's, as far as 2-drops go, it's one of the best. By the way, no Primal cards again, so I think we may be abandoning our initial plan, sad as it may be. We keep on getting past good Justice cards, though, so that's a good sign. We'll just take the Steadfast Paladin. Good time cards. Well, this one's pretty good. This one's just kind of meh. But I'm really happy to have the Steadfast Paladin. I actually just drafted a deck that had 0 answers to Paladin. If my opponent had played a Paladin, I would have been in a lot of trouble, and I guess that happened. I did lose to that once. Okay, so Roosting Warhawk is reasonable, though I think I just want the Auric Lookout. I just like the body. 2/3 endurance for 3 that scouts when it enters play, and you can also play it for 2 if you need to fill out your curve somewhere. I just think that this card is very solid, especially with the flyers. I already mentioned that I'm not a huge fan of this or this one. Roosting Warhawk. If we end up in Huru, there's a lot of big flyers in Primal that would be good. Okay, so Svetya's Faithful. This is a pretty good card. It doesn't look like a whole ton. 2 for a 1/1, even with Warp. It's not exciting, although you can onslaught this pretty well. So we're happy to take that. And it looks like we're just going into Justice, which is... that's true of a lot of the decks that I've played in this format. I've just ended up in Justice a lot because I think it's the deepest faction. Here we're going to take the Daring Maneuver Combat Trick. I think that the Outfitter is a pretty good card, but we're just so far away from Shadow, and we saw some good fire cards come around, so I think that's what we want. The Farlong's okay, but I'm not too excited about it. We'll take a Cobalt Coin. This is something that Gaunan pointed out to me, is that you can play the coins off faction, and they can be quite good. I think that Cobalt Coin is not as good as whatever the Justice one is. Emerald Coin, I'm guessing it's called. But I think it's still pretty good, you might be able to get force an opponent to attack where they otherwise don't want to. But it is a little awkward just in that you have to have a good attack and before you play this. So, and the effect helps your attacks. Anyway, we're going to take a Cobalt Coin. That seems pretty likely that we'll play it if we're in Primal or not. Okay, I'll take the Flash Grenade. I think this is a great trick. Really surprised to see it this late. I think that there are a lot of decks... Oh god, a second one. There are a lot of decks that just have a bunch of stuff, and for those decks, Flash Grenade is what you want, because if someone just has a million 2/2s, Flash Grenade negates them all for a turn, and you just wait until you have a gigantic combat situation, and you Flash Grenade them, and that's it. Okay, so in this pack, we don't have any good Justice cards. We don't really have any great Primal cards. Like, I think Scaly Gruin's pretty good, and Advanced Scout is, like, positive filler. But I'm not, like, super thrilled about taking any of them. So I'm just going to take the Elder Astrologist. This card is very good. I mean, it was very good in the set that it came out in. And it's still a bomb. I mean, it's a big flyer. It also gives you lifesteal, which is huge in a format as aggressive as this one. So we'll take that. And we'll move into Shadow if it's open. Okay, so, well, this is not exciting. One thing I should note is that the curated packs are notoriously bad. They're not just bad, they're just, like, really bad. And if you can just pull together a few playables out of them, that's pretty much the best case scenario, as it turns out. So even cards like Curator Spear, I'd be happy to get out of these packs. Watch Flaminera is definitely way better than average, and same with Awakened Sentinel as far as these packs go. I actually like these 3 time cards, but jumping into time, I feel like I just need the Valkyrie Militant. That's something that comes up a lot in the curated packs, is that you just need to pick something that you can play. So your Valkyrie Militant being a 2/2 flyer for 4 that's not an efficient stat line, but it's good enough, and it does something. So it's that or Curator Spear. I'm definitely in Justice, so I'll take the Militant. I don't think that Curator Spear is fantastic in this format. But you know what is fantastic in this format? Crown Watch Standard. I think this is one of... in set 4, Fall of Argenport, I thought that Crown Watch Standard was one of the best cards that you could pick up in Justice. And I think that's the same for this set. It's really tempo, swingy, and the just getting +3/+3 in lifesteal is great. And then on top of that, you have the option to play it for power if you really need it. I'd also be looking at like Extract, Flickerling, Curator Spear. Like, these are fine cards to be taking out of the curated packs, but in our main faction, getting a Crown Watch Standard is great. Well, this is really interesting. Beast Caller's Amulet is the best it's ever been. It's easier to infiltrate in this set than it ever has been for a card like Beast Caller's Amulet, so I'm tempted to take it. It's really good on, like, Steadfast Paladin also. But because people are shifting in their cards so frequently, a lot of the times people just don't have as many blockers early on, and you can sneak in that hit and get the 5/5. That being said, there's Defiance in this pack, and I only have 1 Shadow card. This is a pretty good one, but Defiance is also just really good. There's so many combat tricks in the format. Having a Defiance to blow out a combat trick just seems fantastic. So I'm just going to take Defiance. I think that Beast Caller's Amulet might be a little better, but we're definitely in Justice, and we could... I don't want to risk not ending up in Shadow to pass up on something like Defiance. Okay, Brightmace Paladin is good. Not much has changed there. It's always been pretty good. Like, 3 cost 3/3 is a good stat line, and getting lifesteal is big in this format. I'd say that lifesteal is pretty important with how swingy games can be. Okay, so I think the best card in this pack is Extract. Good, nice little removal spell. You also get some scout value off of it. Gun Down is fine if we're in fire, but we really only have 2 fire cards. None of them are terribly exciting. Inspire Sellsword is not as good as it was in set 4, but I think it's serviceable if you have the right deck. We currently don't. Just like to point out, we've got 2 Flash Grenades, but there are some decks that just have a ton of cheap spells, and the Inspire Sellsword puts in some work. But we're just going to take the Extract here and be happy about it. Ooh, I love Shugo Standard. That being said, there's a Dark Return here. I think that if we can... This is a good card. I think Shugo Standard's better than Dark Return because it doubles as a power when you need it. But Dark Return's pretty good. You can do some cool things with Svetya's Faithful in Dark Return. Like, you attack with the Svetya's Faithful, you trade with the 3/3, then you Dark Return and play it again, and all of a sudden it's a 6/6. And also, one other thing is that it you can rebuy a set 6 card, and the set 6 cards are better than the curated packs cards. So anytime you can do that, anytime you can take one of the picks from the curated pack and have it essentially be a pick from set 6, or like double something, or like something like Scheme, for example. You get to look for a different card, and that card might be from one of the set 6 packs, and I think those are just better. Dark Return, you can pick up something from set 6 that died, and that's just works out better. It's really good with the Toroid test pilots also. Alright, well, we have our choice of bad removal. We've got Inspire Obedience, which costs 7, and Downfall, which costs 5. You get to Scout. But Downfall has you have to kill something that has 5 attack or more, and it's possible, but sometimes that doesn't happen. I'm just going to take the Inspire Obedience. I don't love it, but I'll play one a lot of the time. I'll take the Charge Shroud. I would not want to play it, but it is possible. Disrupt just to silence something, maybe? I think that Astromancer's Compass is really bad in this format. Oh, boy, hand standard this late. It's so good. All the standards are just really strong. Flash Freeze, okay, a couple good shadow cards to, couple good primal cards to round it out, which we're probably not going to play. Okay. This pack has a Dark Return, happy to have that. It also has Copper Hull Recruit, which is actually a nice stat line in this format. It's got Diplomat, which is serviceable, but obviously not where you want to be. It has Mob Rule, which is a card that I think is much better than it used to be. I always knew that Mob Rule was a good card, but not like super good. And I think in this format it really shines because units are coming off of shift and being unblockable, and you get to mob rule them. There's also a bunch of cards that start small and grow bigger, such as Toroid Test Pilot. Mob rule does a pretty good job of taking them down. So mob rule is probably the best shadow card common that you're looking for when you're opening these packs. So our plans of being in Argenport look like they're panning out pretty well. So I'm checking for anything we might want to splash with the Sea of Glory, but I think we're just going to end up taking a Militant. I don't want a second Inspire Obedience, and Militant is not great, but it is serviceable. Let's see. I'll just take another Bright Mace Paladin here. Definitely happy to have it. Talked about that already. Sharpened Reflexes. Well, it goes really well with Bright Mace Paladin. It goes pretty well with Dark Return. And aside from that, it's just like kind of a medium trick, but we'll take it as opposed to something that's off faction. There's another clan standard that's pretty good, but we just don't have much primal. And one other thing I should mention, in this format, you do not have a ton of playables because of the weakness of, well, first of all, set 6 is not the absolute most deep. There are a lot of good cards, certainly, but there are also a lot of cards that you probably don't want to play. So, in the curated packs, that is exaggerated even. Exaggerated, that might not be the right word. It is, well, it's more to that extent. Like, you could easily not find enough playable cards in the curated packs, so you gotta take what you're given. We're going to take Suffocate here. This works pretty well. I mean, again, a lot of units just don't start out with a ton of attack, like the test pilots. Suffocate's a good way to answer them. Fall Short. This is a pretty good kill spell. It doesn't work so well against fire, I've noticed. Like the aggressive fire decks, they have a lot of like charge and reckless that just get in the way of Fall Short working, but I think it's still the best card. And it's also the only card in our factions. Yeah, I really don't want to play the Rampager, so I'll just take a Downfall here. Not hoping to play it. Ooh, Cabal Standard. Detain's pretty reasonable in this format, but we really have 2 flash grenades and they serve a similar purpose. I'm just going to take the standard and be really happy with it. Standard with Bright Mace Paladin. Pretty good. Just taking cards on faction, never ever taking a grit. Lockhorns is somewhat playable. You probably don't ever want to, but you can get some stuff with Lockhorns. Alright, so there's a Spellstrike Sorceress in this pack, which is reasonable. We are very short on units, as you might have noticed here. And that's just something that happens in this format a lot, is that you don't have enough units. It's kind of what I was saying about curated packs. You just don't have the units to function. I actually think that I'm going to take the Spell Strike Sorceress, even though I think Withering Touch is a better card. We're just so short on units. We need units. Like, Valkyrie Militant is probably one of our top 10 units right now, even though it's very unexciting. So we're just going to take the Spell Strike Sorceress. I would rather take Withering Touch if this was like a pick one and somehow I knew I wanted to be Shadow. Cryptic Master is pretty good, but yeah, we're going to take the Sorceress. This card is not actually good. As much as I would want this card to be good, it is not. Yeah, this is coming out on like turn 10 or something. It's just not going to happen. In limited, people are playing out their units. That's going to keep the count up high on Secret Weapon. So here I think we have either Angry Prophet, which is a fine 2-drop, or Roosting Warhawk, which is a fine flyer. I think that we need Curve, or Lookout can kind of be a 2-drop, but I'm just going to take the Angry Prophet. It's also pretty good against, like, Flash Grenade, I guess. Or with Flash Grenade, rather, I should say. Alright, there's another Test Pilot. Always happy to pick up these. They just become such great threats in the mid-late game. Spell Strike Sorceress would probably be fine for this deck also, but not going to pass up a Test Pilot. Okay, I've heard good things about Shield Crafter. I haven't played it yet. I assume you want to be playing it with Blade Barrier. And Blade Barrier is really good if you're in a Armor Matters deck, and we kind of are, but I don't think we're enough to really take it. But I can't pass up Retribution. That's some pretty cool art. You get to see the explosion in full view. This is pretty premium Justice Removal, so we're going to go ahead and take that. I know we need units. I want to try out the Shield Crafter at some point, but I can't pass up a Retribution. I'd be really happy with the coin too, so lots of good options there. There's another Retribution, which makes me think that I probably should have taken something else, but we're not passing it up. Camel's Blueprints is surprisingly fine. Like, if you have a Relic Weapon, just giving it +1/+1 is a pretty big deal. I'm just going to take a second Retribution, though. If we could get some evasion, like a flyer or something, that would be excellent. Coastal Curator has a really nice sized body. We don't have a ton of spells that are just, like, great to play before attacking. So I'm actually just going to take another Spell Strike Sorceress. I feel like we've got a lot of tricks. And shifting this as it gets up to size, I think is going to be good. You definitely want to be doing something on turn 2, and it's not like we have a ton of 2-drops. We've got the Lookouts and the Sorceress, so that's something. Sad to pass up the Curator, but I think it's fine. It's also difficult to attack with the Curator a lot of the time. Right, there's a Shield Crafter, but boy, I have a really hard time passing up Emerald Coin. I just think this card's so good. Yeah, we don't need another Flash Grenade. Twin Size, fine. Shield Crafter is probably good. 2/6 gums up the board pretty well, but it also doesn't threaten them. I'm going to take the Emerald Coin. Getting just +1/+1 on the board for kind of for free is a big deal. I'll take the Amber Coin here. Might end up splashing it, but I think it's unlikely. But having it is pretty nice. Oh boy, okay. So let's take a look at Blood Nurse. If we have ways of pumping its health, I think it can be pretty good. It goes really well with cards like Arcanum Elite and Refresh. Those are two really good cards to pair with your Retributions. Or sorry, pair with your Blood Nurses. But I don't see that we have that many effects. It's also just being a 1/1. Like, paying 3 for a Vampire Bat is not exciting. I'm just going to take another Retribution. Hopefully, between all of our flyers and just some early units and Steadfast Paladin and whatnot, we'll be able to trigger Onslaught, although it is going to be tough because we're not playing these 3 units. We've only got 14 as it is. I'll take the Twin Sai. If we could get a unit in the last pick, that would just be excellent. No? Okay, well, we're going to be really low on units, and we have a lot of things that have Onslaught. We've got a lot of good removal and whatnot, but it might be a little hard to turn on. Geez, 3 Retributions. Spell Strike Sorceress. We do have a bunch of shifts, so hopefully that'll help us turn on some of these. Hopefully that'll help us turn on some of these Onslaught triggers. Alright, so Lockhorns, I think, is just worse than a lot of the other stuff we have. I don't know about Sharpened Reflexes. Like, we already have 2 Flash Grenades, and generally I just think that's a better trick. That being said, like, we just don't have units. I think I should play the Twin Sai. I think in conjunction with a lot of removal, with which we have, Twin Sai is probably pretty good. This is 26 power. We've got 2 standards. I could just run it like this. 14 units. It's not really enough. Not like I have a ton of options as far as adding extra units goes either. The curve's pretty low, so that's nice. We've got a lot of like shift and endurance going on there. Man, I would play the 1-3 in this deck, as embarrassing as that is. So, Lockhorns or Inspire Obedience or Downfall? I do not like Downfall. I will avoid playing Downfall whenever I get a chance. I can't imagine that's the pick here. Sharpen Reflex also could do it. Maybe I'll just put in the 1 of Inspire Obedience. Kill anything. Just a bad Eviscerate, really. Alright, so let's add the standard. Let's add the coin and the standard. This is what I was talking about. Like, most of our cards are really good, but we're still short playables. If we had picked up Argenport Soldiers, the 3-2 for 2 Injustice, that would be excellent in this deck. If we picked up the Scavenging Vulture, the 1-1 flying for 2, that becomes a 2-1. If you have a unit in the void, that'd be great in this deck. Just because we need more units. We just don't have enough. This deck seems fine. It's not insane. You can definitely get up to 7 wins, but I'm not expecting it. I don't think I'm going to splash. I talked about potentially splashing the Cobalt coin. I'm not going to do it because our Onslaught effects are taxed enough as it is. So we're just going to add power. 8 Shadow Sources and 10 Justice Sources looks pretty good. Might even want 1 more Justice Source because we don't have... I guess this is Double Shadow, this is Double Shadow, this is Double Shadow. Okay, yeah. Hopefully we just hit, you know, double Justice and Double Shadow every game and it's not too big of a deal. Okay, well, that was the drafting portion of the segment. Let's go on to the games.